Hello everyone and welcome to Lush and Salty Aquariums. My name is Stefan. Thank you for coming to the channel. Well, the last few videos I've interspersed a lot of conversation about water changes and how I do them and what they do for me, etc. And I mentioned that only 1 or 2 tanks in my fish room, in my fish keeping repertoire, are not susceptible, if that's the right word, to my water changing routine. My water changing routine for most of my aquariums is 40% once a week. And I did say that there were a couple tanks where I did not do that, and we're looking at one of them. This is a approximately 12 gallons. It's not an even 10. It was kind of a specialty rimless aquarium that I found online. The name escapes me, but I think I can easily drum that up if someone's interested, I should say. It has a slightly larger footprint, as you might imagine, than a 10 gallon, and I think you get an extra inch of width, which is pretty cool, and maybe you can get a sense of that here. So while it's not a cube, it is a little bit deeper, and that's always a good thing, right? And I tried to find an aquarium that could fit between these two support beams in my racking system, and I wanted the max space that would allow for me to get in there and work like this. So some clearance up top, as well as a little bit on the sides, well, so the damn thing could fit, etc., etc. And so this is what I came up with. More important, more germane to this video is what I'm trying to do with this system and why I don't feel it's necessary to do water changes as much as I do in the other aquariums. Or necessary, that's a dubious word. I should say desirable. I find water changes to be desirable for both me, the fish keeper, as well as the fish and the overall vibrancy of an aquarium. But it's not as desirable when you're trying for a low pH, acidic, pseudo Blackwater aquarium like I'm doing here. I was gonna go full on Blackwater with this system, and if you look back on some videos, you could see the setup, and I had some pretty high-minded ideas. But what's ultimately happened, and primarily because I adore aquatic plants too much to forsake them for a Blackwater system, I conceded to a partial Blackwater in that I would include a whole lot of botanicals. I would use aqua soil, inert stones, and a lot of driftwood and a lot of plants to create a very acidic, low pH environment that would be suitable to the inhabitants that I wanted to put in this aquarium. You can see all the neons, and they're very fat and happy. I bought them as small, sort of inexpensive bag of 12 at a fish swap, but they were really healthier than I thought they would be, and they've responded to my live food regimens and everything else, and now they're just big fat puppies shoaling about in this aquarium. Fortunately, neons like to be in packs. This is about as small as I would go for fish that are this big now, at least in terms of that school. They seem very happy, and because I feed a lot of live foods in particular to this tank, and I'll tell you why in a second, they're really robust. I mean, if you can see that beautiful kind of football shape, no markings or blemishes, very vibrant and delineated color. Just a really good example of a neon tetra. The main fish I wanted to keep in here, or at least the one I wanted to feature, and if some of you have followed this channel and seen me talk about this aquarium before, it is the licorice gourami. I don't have the Latin name for it, and while I started filming, there we go. I was gonna say I had 3 front and center. I couldn't find one, but there's a couple right there. Is that a pair? You see it right between the bogwood there? Look at that beautiful structure. It is in the, it is a gourami, so it has some of that iconic shape, but it really is its own creature. And they're pretty sensitive. They like a low pH tank, And even the ones you buy that are presumed, look at that, look at him, the male in the back there, raising his fin up. So cool. Like, just glorious, special fish. Thing is, they're very special in more ways than one. They really only prefer wet food at all. I haven't seen them ever touch any kind of dry food. And honestly, the only food I've actually observed them eating constantly are live baby brine shrimp, pieces of blackworm, live blackworm. They will take one end of it and swim around eating the 1-inch blackworm for an hour. So I try to keep both of those live foods on hand. I should also say, and I tend to forget this, in my fish room closet I raise grindle worms, and grindle worms are a little bit smaller. And there we go, there's a whole bunch of them right there. At least there's one glorious one here. I think that's a female because it's lighter colored. The males tend to skew black. But anyway, the grindle worms, they also love those, and what fish wouldn't, little wiggly white worms. Those are awesome too, and very easy to culture relative to, say, white worms, which require refrigeration. So these fish, the licorice gourami, require a whole lot of special treatment, starting with the low pH and the tannins you see here, plants, moody lighting, not too high, and live food. And all of those things are in this aquarium. And if I did 40% water changes once a week, that would upset the continuity of what I'm trying to establish in this tank. Some cool things, obviously, I'm a super fan of root structures that are coming from primarily the emerged plants here, but probably the Brazilian pennywort and the floating water lettuce, I think that's frog bit, all contribute to the effect, especially toward the surface. But those roots are all from this one kind of stream of pothos moving along the back, and I suppose as well as that specimen plant whose name I don't have. Its leaves fold up every night and open up in the day, lest I think it was dying. That's just what it does. It's kind of cool. So those roots have created this network, this system, and I feel that replicates, if not literally, poetically, what an Amazonian backwater, streamlet, offshoot to a bigger river, quiet area, puddle pool, riverbank, all that I'm trying to create. And I think the low-hanging roots, which by the way are now totally starting to go into the substrate here, which is UNS aqua soil. And I had capped it, no, I didn't cap it, I'm sorry. What you're seeing below there in the sediment layer, I believe was the sand that used to be in front here, and it long ago the aqua soil cascaded over it, and I'm fine with that. Using sand as decoration to create paths and stuff makes for a cool video, and it's pleasing and fun to do. But honestly, even if you put barriers up and do different things, eventually the pathways or the sand will become obstructed, and you have to be okay with that, or you have to really, really work hard to keep it clean. And this tank, with all the botanicals releasing all kinds of particulates, to say nothing of tannins, is quickly going to darken up the substrate there, and that's part of what happened. Crypt parva is all that wonderful ground cover, if you will. It's a very small cryptocorn, slow growing, and it doesn't fill up the substrate like a hairgrass or a Sagittarius, or Sagittarius, a dwarf sag, or a Holanthium would. But I love how it creates, you can see through it, right? And those leaves are very special to this plant. They like inverted teardrops, a nice green color, very consistent and low to the ground, slow growing. Likes a little bit more light than some cryptocorn, but I'm sure it would do fine in your system, whatever that might be. I've got epiphytes out the yin yang. You can see all this Anubias, different kinds, I'm sure, from petite to maybe coin and coffeola or barteria, those bigger leaves in the back there. And those are all wedged between the petrified wood and that piece of bog wood. And then of course I have a dwarf lily, the green version. That's different than the red ones a lot of people love to feature in their tanks, as do I, but this is the green form. It can't compete, you know, straight up in a beauty contest with those glorious pink, maroon, red, purple leaves, but it's doing exactly what I want it to do in this tank. It's filling out the corner. It's not growing insane in terms of covering the top, and it adds to that left to right effect that I'm trying for in this aquarium. Another inhabitant in this tank are the dwarf pygmy coreodoras, and there's one there. And you can see, a lot of people talk about it, it will swim in the mid-water column, and you can see those two doing it. They're not just in the back or bottom. They're often flitting about, even schooling with the tetras, especially if they look like them. And then finally, there's what's called a Morse code tetra. And I will try to find, I had a group of about 5 or 6. Not sure I have that many left. It's a rarer, more exotic tetra, and it has these gold sort of dots on the side of it that mimic, and I'm trying to zero in on one right there. You can see the dash, dash, dash. You see those gold dashes on that little tetra there? That's where it gets Morse code. In addition, some people argue it's because of the way it stays in place and its fins kind of flit, like dot, 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 dot. And you can kind of get a sense of that from this video. See how it's doing that? So it's like sending Morse code. Another low pH, Blackwater preferring type of a fish. A lot of small tetras will do just wonderful in a system like this. And then finally, surprisingly saving for last in terms of, you know, maybe not last in this video, but darn near it, the background is one of those UNS color forms. It's called the Atmos, A-T-M-O-S, and it has this wonderful controller. It's pretty easy to set up. It wasn't made for this exact aquarium, but I spec'd out the closest one, and it's only off by centimeters, and it's pretty cool. Watch this. Woo! Pretty neat, huh? I don't do edibles, but if I did, I would sit in my chair and probably do this all night. Woo! Listening to some fun trippy music. You know, it has a setting where you can have it rotate colors. I just don't want to subject my fish to that. What color do you think is best? I'm kind of leaning on, not that obviously, but somewhere in the golds to the greens. Not too green, that becomes sort of insane. I mean, the effect is badass, but it's not natural. I'm thinking the closest to natural would be some sort of sunset through the tannins. Anyway, I arrived at that. I'd love to know what you think, because it's really just me making these decisions. I could ask my wife, she's a designer. You see the botanicals on the bottom. Those are primarily all hard. The leaves have long since dissipated. I could add some more, but I'm giving the crypt parva a chance to take over, because I love that plant, and I would have no problem if it just migrated to the front all the way across and formed what I would think is a pretty rare to achieve carpet of crypt parva. Up top I have some driftwood hanging over the side, and then that's how I strung the pothos. It wasn't a vine when I put it in here. It was just a few inches cutting, and I probably put back there somewhere, but you could see what it's done. And then along when at setup, I put in this little piece of pothos, and it looks like it's doing mediocre because the light does hit those leaves a little too hard. but it's hard and stuck and healthy down at the rootstock. So if I ever moved the light, adjusted the intensity, it would just rebound. I cut off the leaves when they get too sort of burnt up, but I'm leaving it there because I know it's okay, and it's just a function of the light that keeps it, that has challenged it, shall we say. And this here is Brazilian pennywort, kind of a new addition to my fish room, a few months in, and it grows gangbusters. I sort of like it in continuity with frogbit or floating plants in general, because it adds that lime green, and then it behaves much the same way with beautiful stems that hang down, and it's a workhorse in terms of pulling out nutrients in the water and shading the water column so that these fish are in their most comfortable. Let's move that out of the way. There's a nice shot of the licorice gourami. You can see it now, the glorious finnage, that turquoise, that very unusual color against brown. So turquoise and brown is a pretty trendy color combination, honestly, and not many fish have it. So when I say trendy, I mean in the human world. I see fashionable women combining these two colors in their wardrobe, and I just make the assumption that that they know what they're doing. So Mother Nature designed a pretty spiffy wardrobe for the licorice gourami. Now, licorice gouramis come in many varieties, and while they're similar in shape and size, they do vary considerably in terms of their color and their patterning. But you can generally only find one or two at a place like the Wet Spot, sometimes Aquatic Arts. Big fan of the Wet Spot, by the way, and Dan's Fish will have them. All your better online stores might have some licorice gouramis. I think they're around 10 bucks each, maybe a little less. Some can be considerably more. I forget the exact species I bought here, but you can see the male in the back, which is much darker, and the female in front. And they're doing just fine with the other fish. They've been in here about at least a half a year, and because I give the live food and because I do what they like in so many other ways, they do what I like, which is survive and thrive and become a very interesting part of my fish room here at Lush and Salty Aquariums. I'm gonna close on that male and female doing their thing. Wish they would have done that right in the beginning, because now you get a perfect shot and you see the difference between the two. Okay, everybody, as per usual, always keep your hands in the tank, and ciao for now.